So I've been playing on my alternate account with a friend that plays a lot of DPS recently, and mainly is just trying to learn how to play Tracer. And I decided, while I'm playing with him, helping him learn the game, I'll just fill characters, and for the majority of the time, I'm ending up playing support. And throughout all this time, I'm learning just what you can actually do with this role, and how I'm supposed to be able to carry this game and help my friend win some games. Now, I'm going to say that, yes, on my main account, I do main tank, and I got to Masters with tank. It's probably my best role, but I've been climbing really fast with support, honestly. I have about an 85% win rate as Mora, Zenyatta's around 70. And overall, I feel like there are some main things that I've kind of figured out that you might actually want to try to implement into your own gameplay if you are playing support. And mainly as well, some main things you kind of want to think to yourself when you're playing this role that can help you not get tilted and in the long run climb a lot higher. Now, as well, if you're a player that plays other roles than support, tank, or DPS, I'm hoping to make a video like this in the near future. I've played a lot of tank, and I've pretty much just one-tricked Reaper on one of my accounts, so hopefully I can kind of talk about that in the future. But right now, let's talk to the support mains. And the first thing I wanted to say that I think is the most important thing for me actually continuing to fill on this account and actually liking to play the role is to think of support differently than the other roles, and mainly think of it differently than DPS. I think when you play Overwatch competitive, a lot of the times people kind of slip into the DPS mindset where they think that every single game, if they play completely out of their mind, they can carry no matter what. And I think with a lot of support mains, they kind of bring that into their own games and kind of believe that for themselves, and the mindset kind of carries over. But what I'm going to say to you guys is that don't believe that every single game is super carryable and that no matter what, you'll be able to win that game. Because honestly, some games, you just have to, look at the cards that you've been dealt, try your best, and move on from there. And overall, I'm going to say if you are a support main that actually wants to climb long term, don't beat yourself up over losses. Because I know a lot of support mains do, but you really can't. And if you look at a lot of the best support mains, it's hard for them to get past a 60 or like 62 win rate, because you do rely so much on your team, and that's just kind of the nature of the role. I can't say that you can hard carry every single game as this role. I do think that you can climb and that you can rank up with it, but do just realize that it's going to be a longer climb, maybe easier in the long run, but a longer climb. And do realize that, yeah, sometimes the games will just be a little bit over what you can handle. And again, don't beat yourself up over it, because you're just going to be giving up if you do that. It's really not worth it. Now, the next thing I want to say to you guys that are playing support is that if you are a person that just really wants to carry a game, and you're not beating yourself up over it too much anymore, but you really still want to carry those games, I'm going to tell you that you should not be playing a main healer if you want to hard carry. Now, if you are better at a main healer than the opponents, you can carry that game, and I'm going to say you can kind of soft carry it. You can make so that your teammates will have an easier time to beat the enemies, because they're going to have overall more HP per second from you than the enemy supports are doing. You're going to be alive for longer, and of course you are going to be helping that game win. But if you're a person that really wants to feel like you are carrying that match, of course you shouldn't be playing a main healer. You should be playing an off healer, maybe a Zenyatta, maybe a Lucio, or maybe even a more, depending on how that works. I mean, she is kind of a main healer, but I've had some good success with her as well with carrying games. I think that overall, if you are a person that just feels like you have to carry games and that's really what you're looking for, look at your character pool, and if you realize that you're playing Mercy every single game, maybe you should kind of realize why your goal and the way that you're trying to reach the goal don't exactly match up. I do think that Mercy, again, can, in the long run, climb, but again, it's kind of hard to exactly carry games with her. Now, one thing I should mention right here is that if you don't have any main healers on your team, or if you don't have any healers at all on your team, of course, yeah, you should go the solo main healer. But if there is the opportunity for you to go a off healer, Lucio, Zenyatta, again, I would definitely recommend to try to take that. And I guess something right here I really want to remind you guys again is that you can climb as a support main without hard carrying every single game. And I think you should really get that in your mind. Sure, carrying feels good. Sure, carrying looks awesome. But there's other levels of winning a game. And just by supporting your teammates and giving them a higher chance to win than the enemies, that could be enough to slowly climb up the ladder. So please do keep that in mind. Now, one thing that I'm going to remind you guys about right here, I guess, that might be kind of throwing quite a few of your games, is maybe sometimes believing in your teammates a little bit too much, and mainly overextending to heal teammates that are way out of position. I'm going to say that this happens a lot, and especially with Mercy main, since you have all that mobility to get next to your teammates in the front line, a lot of the times you'll just run up, go right next to your Roadhog that's just way too far out there, try to start to heal him, then you die, you complain that you died, that you didn't get any help, and there you go with that. Don't kill yourself for your team. You should be healing them, you should be keeping them up, but don't kill yourself for them. And if you keep having your teammates that are going too far up, type it in chat, call it out, tell them to come back to you and say, I'm not going to heal you if you go up there. And if you keep saying that, a lot of the times people will say, hey, well, I really do want heals, so I guess I'll play back a little bit. Just don't kill yourself for your teammates, because, yeah, if you die and that teammate dies, there's almost a 0% chance you're going to be able to hold that point. But sometimes, if just your teammate dies, well, you might be able to res them later, or on the other hand, you might be able to just make a big play that can make so you can win that 5v6. Just keep that in mind, because in order to climb, you want to be consistent. You don't want to just go for huge power plays that are probably kind of dumb, honestly, and you don't want to support people that are way too far up. Now, as far as, I guess, other climbing tips right here, power plays and everything like that, a thing that I think you guys should remember is that if you do want to actually eventually climb as a support main, you need to do one of two things, and that is either shot call a lot and get really good calls and tell people when to go in and who to go in on, or die much less often than the enemy supports. Of course, getting better aim, getting better damage out, getting more kills as somebody like Zenyatta, or getting better sleep darts, that is important, but I think the two main things you have to try to improve yourself on is either, again, shot calling, or if you can't do that, just dying less. Because if you look in a game, if you are a support that dies less than the enemy support, well, your teammates have a lot more healing, they're a lot more likely to survive, they're a lot more likely to kill the enemy, and you're a lot more likely to win. If you die half as much as the enemy support, if you can somehow get away from the enemy flankers twice as much as the enemy support can get away from your flankers, that's kind of how a lot of people actually end up climbing. And honestly, I think that's something that you should kind of keep in mind. As well, though, if you just can't happen to live, if you know that's a big problem for you, try to make shot calls. Try to play heroes that can use those shot calls. Ana with her ultimate, Moira with the ball and all of her heals, Death Ball, or mainly Lucio or Zen with the damage orb or the speed boost. One of those two options, I think, are the things you do have to focus on if you want to climb. Of course, maybe they won't be things that are going to be able to hard carry the game by yourself again, but overall in the long run, if you can become good at either of those things, you're going to eventually climb, because you'll be much better than the enemy supports that are dying all the time, or you're going to be making much more shot calls than the enemy supports that are going to give you good situations. Either way, it's a really good thing for you, and those are the two things I'm going to say you should try to kind of mention for. Now, another thing that's completely different that I want to talk about right here is ultimate usage. And I think this is an extremely important part about playing a support, because they are some of the most important ults in the entire game by far, because they stop the enemy from completely tearing apart your team, especially if you're playing Lucio or Zen, or even some other characters like Mercy with a good amount of healing. I think you should try to remember that your ultimate can, by itself, win your team a team fight, because they're just so powerful and they really give your team a huge advantage. I'm going to say, try to save your ultimate for either enemy team wipes, like let's say a Graviton or a Genji ult or something like that, or if, on the other hand, you're playing someone like Ana or Moira, or someone that doesn't have a really good counter ult, maybe use your ultimate to engage when you know that the enemy has a good ult. Let's say, again, they have a Genji. Well, if you can engage with your ultimate before the Genji can engage, you can maybe get a pick or two, and then the Genji's going to jump on your backline, and then maybe he'll get a kill or two, but at least you're going to be tied in that situation. I see a lot of times when people are playing Ana and Moira, and the enemy Genji jumps on them, and there's absolutely nothing they can do. So, I think you're going to have to be kind of proactive, think about when the Genji ultimate's going to kind of be up, and go in with that. And overall, do think about your ultimate usage, because if you can be better at using your ultimates than the enemy supports, a lot of the times, that alone can carry you up 200 or 300 SR, which is kind of nice, honestly, for a lot of people. Now, for some of the final things I want to mention, these kind of talk about your team and how that works. So let's get on to the first thing. If you want a better team comp, you need to duo queue with a DPS or a tank. And I think if especially you're playing somebody that is a support, you should always be playing with a tanker or a DPS main. Supports just synergize with them so well. There's a ton of examples. Let's just choose the obvious ones. Zenyatta and Tracer, duo queue, does so much damage, so much picks, amazing together. Or let's say Lucio Winston, a great dive composition. You know, there's just a ton of different examples. If you're playing support though, you really have to play with a DPS main or tank main if you want to be able to carry that game with them, and you kind of have to carry it together. You don't have to play with them if you want to just climb in the long run, but I think if you want to expedite the process and you really feel like you are better than all the other supports of your rank, that's kind of how you can prove it, honestly. And I guess the final thing I want to say is that if you're really worried about team comps, which I know a lot of support players are and a lot of fill players are, just don't worry about it too much. Especially if you are a support player, realize that if you are playing support, then that's a much higher chance of your team having a good team comp than the enemy team having a good team comp, because, you know, you already have one of the necessary characters that nobody wants to play, while the enemies have not that chance on their side. And I think that's honestly a kind of important thing to keep in mind. Your team comps should generally maybe be a little bit better than the enemies. Of course, it is generally random, but you have a much better chance of having a good team comp. Let's say you have a 1 in 5 chance instead of a 1 in 6 chance. I mean, maybe not the best thing, but it is something to keep in mind and something that you shouldn't worry about yourself too much. I think a lot of support mains kind of get caught up in bad team comps. They think about, hey, what do I have to do to try to carry this game with this terrible team? Don't worry about it too much. Just play the best that you can. If you have a really aggressive 3 DPS team comp, maybe go Mora or go Mercy or go Zen or really whatever. Just play up front, try to get kills with them. Just try to play however your team comp can work, and just try to make it work, honestly, and keep people alive the most you can. Of course, it's not the best situation, but I think that's the #1 most important thing, I guess, with climbing. Don't worry too much about your team comp, because it's oftentimes not going to be way too great, but you can still win with it, even if that's the case. But with all that said, guys, thank you all for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed. Just wanted to talk about today what I personally believe are some of the things that can actually help you climb as a support main. But if I made some stuff that you think was really important, make sure to leave that down in the comment section down below. As well, if you want to hear me talk about any other roles, like let's say you're a support main that also plays a lot of tank, well, tell me that down there below as well, and maybe I'll try to get to that in the near future. Anyways, as always, guys, thank you all for watching. If you guys enjoyed, leave a like or press the subscribe button. And as always, guys, have a wonderful day.